A very good evening to you, our viewers. Welcome to it. This is the Camnet main news. My name is Sharon Kalimbola. The top stories on our desk this evening: police deployed to capture suspected hired assassins in MAFINGA district. Whirlwind leaves over 50 families homeless in SIAVONGA district. UPND'S obvious MWALITETA sues government for malicious prosecution. In international news, Libya's capital remains tense after more than 30 killed in violent clashes. In sports news, the chess national team in camp ahead of Africa Individual Chess Championship to be held in Nigeria.
It's census time. The 2022 Census of Population and Housing will be conducted from 18th August to 14th September 2022. The census collects a lot of data for use in various aspects of social and economic planning for the country. We are all required to participate in the census by being counted. You will be counted from your usual dwelling place by a census enumerator. Please receive and cooperate with the census enumerator and provide the required information when you will be visited. Your responses to the census questions will be treated with strict confidentiality and will be used for statistical purposes only.
Hi, I'm coming to count you.
Because everyone counts.
This message is brought to you by the Zambia Statistics Agency with support from the UNFPA.
Thank you for choosing us. The news in detail. Over 50 families have been left homeless in SIAVONGA district following a whirlwind which blew off roofing sheets from their houses and left several houses collapsed. The incident happened on Sunday, 28th August 2022, around 13 hours in Mavulele, Navasi, Masiku, and Mutandalima, among other villages in Chief Simamba's chiefdom. The affected families have narrated that some of the roofing sheets which were blown off from their houses landed into Lake Kariba around Kamimbi area. This morning, the District Disaster Management Committee, accompanied by the Council Chairperson, the District Commissioner and Member of Parliament, visited the affected families to assess the situation and see how best they can intervene.
This is Mamba area is to check on the houses that were affected by the whirlwind yesterday. The damage, those houses that were blown off, those that collapsed, and as you can see, like this house, these cracks came about when the roof was about to be blown off. Luckily enough, it was plastered with cement. That's how it couldn't fall off.
Okay, so are you offering any solutions?
Yes, that's why we are here. We are offering solutions as the DDM District Disaster Management Committee. We have come here to assess the situation. When we are done, we will liaise with our superiors in Choma so that we can see how we can help these families that have been affected.
MAFINGA constituency Member of Parliament Robert Chavinga has pledged 50,000 kwacha to anyone who will come forward with information about the whereabouts of a hired assassin terrorizing people in the district. MAFINGA district has in the recent past experienced several suspected paid-off killings of persons usually alleged practicing witchcraft. Meanwhile, village headman Chitente Emmanuel Mugala in MAFINGA district of Muchinga province, who was shot dead by suspected hired assassins locally known as Jambas, has been put to rest. According to the family members, Mr. Mugala was shot on August 24th, 2022 around 18 hours as he was coming from the bathroom and died on the way to Isoka Hospital. Details in this report.
A gloomy mood, heavy presence of police, fear characterized the people of MAFINGA district Sunday, who came in numbers to bid farewell to their village headman Emmanuel Mugala, who was shot dead by unknown people. According to the family, Mr. Mugara, 64, met his fate on the 24th of August, 2022, around 18 hours when he was shot by suspected assassins, locally known as Jambas, who have been terrorizing this part of the country and have killed about 6 people in a space of 2 months. Mr. Mugala has been described as a hard-working leader whose gap will be felt by his family and friends.
To other people, but he was not bad to us as a family. And we have lost him, and a very big gap has been created. Why? The works that he has been doing will be undone in short time to come.
And the area councillor has called for tightened security in the area.
To me and the entire village and the entire chiefdom, we have incurred a great loss. We don't know whether this gap will ever be filled, because we don't know whoever will try to fill it if it will be the same as that one.
Speaking during the burial ceremony, Mafinga constituency member of parliament Robert Chabinga warned that the vice of hiring killers to eliminate others should come to an end. He has disclosed that 30 police officers have been dispatched to Mafinga to bring the scourge under control.
Officer in charge, Gamwasanga to the family, mwachita investigator was part and parcel. Bemieni bonse, abe debanganda, abe shikulu, ngapalina nkoko sendele nikumu. That is the only way for us to very ash. Uli onso wishibe amajambaze kobekala nabale shitisha abantu na chita offer 50,000 kwache ya Zambia. Umuntu yo kwete information muye fezi quite libya brulu benwawe mwalamu na officer kuyefe ku office ya police officer in charge quite fe mutende nga mwalanda bakanje bo uwapela information I'll give 50,000 kwa ya Zambia ndefu ya Mafinga mubyo mutende te twikale no bakoma kapembe no bakoma uyu Sruonde no bakoma chite no bakoma Edmund Chitete chalo shicho.
Community security remains an issue the people of Mafinga want the government to address. Mr. Mugala leaves behind 3 wives and 12 children. Patrick Soko, Camnet News.
The National Union of Public and Private Educators of Zambia, NUPEND'S, has appealed to government to consider placing on payroll teachers that were employed by the former administration but were never put on the payroll. NUPEND'S General Secretary Nelson Mwali tells Camnet News that it is a punishment on the part of the teachers who have continued to work but have never been put on the payroll. Mr. Mwali says inasmuch as it is commendable from a government to pay teachers who have not even started work, the government should not pay a blind eye to those who are already serving. He says close to 300 teachers who were recruited by the former administration in 2021 have not yet started receiving their pay.
We are so grateful and want to applaud the new Dawn government for, paying our new teachers their salaries, even when others have not actually, started work. And so we are so grateful that government has honored, whatever promises were made to do with the education sector. That includes even free education. And now we are looking at the 17,000, employment of our teachers. And we are looking forward that even the 13,000 that were employed will be paid in the next month. I think this is a gesture that must be appreciated. Having said this, I want also to call upon the government to consider including those 3,000 plus that were employed during the PF government but have not been put on payroll to be considered, because a number of them have really suffered, and for them to see their friends that have recently been employed and having been put on payroll, I think it must be very encouraging to them. And so we are saying let them not despair. Very soon we are not going to rest even as unions to ensure that government puts them on payroll, because a number of them have been actually working but not yet put on payroll.
Leader of the opposition in Parliament, Brian Mundubile, has laughed at the United Party for National Development UPND members of Parliament who opposed a motion raised to amend the Constituency Development Fund (CDF) so that it becomes functional. Mr. Mundubile says it is shameful to note that the President called for a meeting with all local authority representatives in Lusaka to come and discuss how to amend the CDF Act when his parliamentarians opposed the move in Parliament. The opposition leader says the current administration should not go to the public with a spirit of competition to show that it is doing better than the former regime. He has wondered how good it is having 25.7 million kwacha lying in the bank accounts while projects are not being implemented.
A call to amend the Constituency Development Fund CDF guidelines by the Patriotic Front members of Parliament to ensure that the guidelines became more functional to allow for CDF resources to be quickly absorbed was rejected by majority of the ruling United Party for National Development UPND members of Parliament who argued that the CDF guidelines were okay. But the leader of the opposition in Parliament, Brian Mundubile, has wondered why President Hakainde Hichilema on 17th August 2022 convened with local authority representatives in Lusaka who were drawn from all corners of the country to discuss how the CDF guidelines could be revised to ensure that they became more responsive to the needs of the people.
So what you have now is a problematic CDF. This CDF has actually failed in its current form. Our friends have not wanted to admit it. But constructively, the President admitted that CDF is, under the current guidelines is failing. How did he admit that? He called up to 750 people to come and attend a meeting in Lusaka at a cost of over 2 million kwacha to try and find solutions on implementing CDF. Now, if our colleagues in Parliament, if our friends in Parliament collapsed the motion that we moved a motion in Parliament, one of our members, urging government to change some CDF guidelines so it could become operational. The reaction from our colleagues on the floor of the House was that in its current form, the guidelines were perfect and the CDF Act was sufficient.
Mr. Mundubile has also wondered how good it is to have 25.7 million kwacha lying in a bank account while projects are not being implemented. He has since advised the government to consider conferring some responsibilities from a small CDF committee to the office of the district commissioner to ensure that the burden of handling 25.7 million kwacha is decentralized.
Have a strategic plan on one side. This strategic plan feeds into the 8th National Development Plan. But the CDF under World Development Committee has nothing to do with what they resolved on the other side. Now, all the money has gone to the CDF. The DC and his directors are stuck. So what the President is attempting to do is to try to amend the law to include DCs in CDF. Now, that is very funny, really. It's unacceptable. What the UPND government must do is just to create a district fund managed by the DC to take care of certain projects.
Bank of Zambia Governor Dr. Denny Kalyalia, during the monetary policy announcement meeting this month, announced that the private sector credit rating had decreased owing to the fact that government has collected more revenue, but the expenditure has been less, thereby affecting liquidity in the economy. There is therefore need to ensure that government finds ways of releasing liquidity in the economy. Prudence Chota, reporting for Camnet TV News.
GEAR's Initiative Executive Director McDonald Chipenzi is hopeful that the amendment of the Public Order Act will allow a level playing field for political parties to communicate their campaign messages to the public. Speaking to Camnet TV on the sidelines of the 3-day stakeholders consultative meeting on the amendment of the Public Order Act, Mr. Chipenzi says this gives stakeholders an opportunity to present and criticize the provisions of the Act so that it can be amended to benefit the majority Zambians. Meanwhile, Home Affairs and Internal Security Minister Jack Mwembu, who officially opened the meeting, is happy that freedom of assembly has been restored in Zambia as opposed to the bloodshed that was witnessed in the Patriotic Front administration.
The Public Order Act is a key piece of legislation with provisions reflecting a colonial legacy.
A stakeholders consultative meeting on the amendment of the Public Order Act has commenced in Lusaka and is being attended by several stakeholders from different walks of life. The Public Order Act has remained a subject of great concern in Zambia, as opposition political parties have in the past cried foul that the act has been used by those in government to abuse their authority by not creating a level playing field for opposition political parties to participate in governance matters. The United Party for National Development UPND administration assured that once in office, they will ensure that the act is amended. And officiating at a 3-day stakeholders engagement meeting on the amendment of the act, Home Affairs Minister Jack Mwimbu was confident to mention that since his party took over office, order has been restored on how the public handles matters of assembly.
That there has been almost no complaint pertaining to the management of the Public Order Act. I have no doubt in my mind that all of us who are stakeholders here who are reviewing this piece of legislation have noted this very important milestone. It therefore means that there was something wrong in the way the existing Public Order Act was being managed in the past.
Meanwhile, Operation Young Vote Executive Director Guest Nirenda says the draft amendment by the Ministry of Home Affairs, working with other agencies such as the Law Development Agency, have lacunas, and stakeholders attending the meeting should ensure that they iron them out.
But if you look at Section 6, it gives the rights and freedoms. It opens it up for people to engage and participate. But again, when you go further to Section 7, it takes away those very rights that it has provided for in Section 6. So we really need to seriously interrogate this and find better ways and means to ensure that we do not give on one hand the freedoms and rights and take away the same freedoms and rights on the other hand.
Meanwhile, GEA's Initiative Executive Director McDonald Jipenzi has welcomed the amendment of the Act, but says the responsibility that will come with the amendment of the Act should not be abused.
Stakeholders, especially politicians, should have the free space to canvass for support. Let them be rejected by the people themselves. And also that this should place responsibilities and duties on all stakeholders that will be managed by this public order law, so that every freedom has got a responsibility and a duty.
I also think that it's important for the bill to speak to the need to protect disadvantaged groups from arbitrary actions of the states when they want to participate in public gatherings, including public protests. So it is important that people with disabilities, people who are elderly and the aged, as well as those who have got illnesses, are able to be protected.
Prudence Jota, reporting for Camnet TV News.
United Party for National Development, Lusaka Province Chairman MWALITETA and a Kafue businessman have sued the government in the Lusaka High Court, claiming damages for malicious persecution in a case where they were acquitted of possession of offensive weapons charges in 2019. Mr. MWALITETA and James Sichomba have cited the Attorney General Mulilo Kabesha as the defendant, seeking an order that they be paid special damages for expenses in the sum of 300,000 kwacha.
On the 27th of March 2019, United Party for National Development UPND Lusaka Province Chairman MWALITETA and the Kafue businessman James Sichomba were arrested by the police on allegations of possession of offensive weapons, but later acquitted. Now 3 years after the incident happened, ruling UPND Lusaka Province Chairman Mr. MWALITETA and the businessman Mr. Choba have commenced a civil lawsuit against the state before the Lusaka High Court, demanding damages for malicious prosecution in relation to the said matter, where they were accused of possession of offensive weapons in 2019. The duo who have sued government are seeking special damages for expenses in the sum of 300,000 kwacha and interest on the sum payable at the Central Bank of Zambia lending rate. In their statement of claim filed before court, The duo submitted that in March 2019, without any reasonable cause, they were apprehended and accused of 2 counts of possession of offensive weapons, and that without prejudice to the above, there were no reasonable ground for suspecting that they committed the offense, but were falsely imprisoned and kept behind custody for a period of 4 days, despite the offense being a bailable and a bondable offense. The UPND LP chairman says he was then put on his defense and later acquitted, adding that his prosecution was because he was affiliated to the current ruling party when it was then in opposition, hence seeks the court's indulgence to order government to pay him damages for forced imprisonment. Miriam Kaimba, reporting for Camnet TV News.
A senior Diamond TV journalist, Darius Jonia, has testified before the Lusaka magistrate that on the 7th of April 2022, he was assigned to cover a case involving former Lusaka Province Minister Bowman Lusambo and his wife, where they are accused of being in possession of property suspected to be proceeds of crime. Mr. Jonia told Magistrate Trevor Kasanda Monday morning that after the case was done, he proceeded to film the duo. However, Mr. Lusambo asked him to focus his camera on the state witness whom he mentioned their names. Mr. Jonia was testifying against Mr. Lusambo in a matter he is accused of interfering with state witnesses.
Diamond TV journalist Darius Jonia Monday morning stood in the witness dock and testified against the former Lusaka Province Minister Bowman Lusambo before a half-packed court. Mr. Jonia, who appeared before the subordinate court, was testifying in a case where Mr. Lusambo, former Kawishi area member of parliament, is charged with 3 counts of attempting to interfere with witnesses contrary to section 112, 1 has read with section 389(1) of the Penal Code, chapter 87 of the laws of Zambia. Mr. Jonia, who is the first witness to be called on stand by the state, narrated in his testimony this morning how he was assigned to cover the accused and his wife on the morning of the 7th of April 2022 before a different magistrate, where they are accused of being in possession of property suspected to be proceeds of crime and are being tried under the Financial Economic Crimes Court. He says on the material day, the case never took off, leading to its adjournment. Mr. Jonia testified that given the nature of his job as a journalist for a TV station, he proceeded to film the accused and his wife as they left the court premise. In a video that Mr. Jonia has produced before court as part of his evidence, Mr. Lusambo is heard telling him not to focus his camera on him, but on the state witnesses. The Anti-Corruption Commissioner slapped Mr. Lusambo with 3 counts of interfering with witnesses, charges which he has denied. It is alleged in count 1 that Mr. Lusambo on dates unknown but between the 1st February 2022 and the 30th of April 2022 in Lusaka, with intent to obstruct the due course of justice, did try to prevent Cosmas Kapula to give evidence as a state witness before a court of law. Allegations in the 2nd and 3rd count is that Mr. Lusambo, between the same date, he tried to prevent Ernest Mumani and Mundia Mata to give evidence as witnesses before a court of law. The court, however, could not proceed with 3 other witnesses that Anti-Corruption Commission prosecutors had lined up. The matter has since been adjourned to the 16th of September 2022 for continued trial. Miriam Kaimba, reporting for Camnet TV News.
The Lusaka Province Permanent Secretary Robert Kamalata says it has been difficult for census enumerators to access information from members of the public, accusing them of not being accommodative. Addressing the media Monday, Mr. Kamalata notes that the enumerators are having challenges in some areas along Independence Avenue and Kamwala in Lusaka. The Permanent Secretary has meanwhile cautioned foreign nationals to welcome the enumerators and cooperate during the ongoing census exercise.
The National
national census is regarded as an important exercise for any country or nation. Census enables government to track developments over a long period of time with considerable accuracy. The census is therefore a fundamental part of every nation's heritage and collective knowledge. At national level, current population statistics are essential for planning the provision of healthcare, education, and employment. The census of population and housing provides vital information to help government and other organizations to make informed decisions. Lusaka Provincial Permanent Secretary Robert Kamalata says the census numerators are experiencing challenges in accessing the needed information because people are not being accommodative.
You may wish to know that in the areas we anticipated we are going to have problems, such as Chiboli and Kanyama. You know, the exercise is going on very, very smoothly and we don't have any problems, and everyone is cooperating with our enumerators and supervisors. But in the areas we anticipated things would go on smoothly, we are encountering a lot of problems. And one of the areas that I should be specific is in Kamwala and some lower residential areas, including Independence Avenue. We're having a lot of problems because the people do not want to give information.
In a number of countries, the population census plays a major role in the allocation of elected political seats in government and the number of elected officials. The permanent secretary has also appealed to the foreign nationals to be accommodative when approached by the enumerators.
And therefore, it is becoming difficult for us to operate effectively. So this is what is going on. So we are appealing to all the residents in Lusaka just to spare a minute or two just to attend to these enumerators. In some instances, other problems that we're encountering that in Lusaka we know that everyone is busy. In some instances, some they leave as early as 6 in the morning and don't return after 20. So each time they go to these households, they are not finding anyone. We are appealing to them. They can even leave a note to indicate when they'll be available so that our enumerators can go back. Remember, we have got only a specific time when we are doing this exercise. So within this specific time, if they can write or leave a note, the enumerators can come and attend to them.
The census that started on the 18th of August 2022 will run up to September 14th, 2022. Blessings Chakwila, Camnet News, Lusaka.
Caritas Zambia has observed that during the first year of the United Party for National Development administration, it has managed to keep its promise and assurance that it was in the process of reinstating the country back to its socio-economic development trajectory. Organization Executive Director Father Gabriel Mapulanga says efforts have been seen in the way government has handled the date crisis. He says the heightened debate on date and the opening of pathways towards its dismantling are positive economic signs. The Caritas Zambia has also implored government to ensure the fight against corruption is not used as a tool to oppress other political opponents. Father Mapulanga says the fight should be done in an impartial and non-partisan manner.
The UPND government has made a lot of progress in opening up dialogue and moving towards the dismantling of both the domestic and international debt. By bringing together Zambia's debtors, making them realize the crisis so as to establish the best way of helping Zambia to make its debt sustainable is a huge achievement. Caritas Zambia is also happy that a public debt management bill is being considered by Parliament and will soon be enacted into law. This is commendable because Zambia needs order, transparency, and accountability in the manner debt is contracted and used in the country. Parliament should have a significant role in this respect. However, Caritas Zambia urges the government to share simplified information on the status of the existing debt and on the debt dismantling strategy that is being implemented.
A newly registered Pig Association of Zambia is calling on government to ensure a level playing field for the pig farmers for the sector to grow. Speaking at the launch of the association in Lusaka, Association Chairperson Shamiso Mukambiro says the pig industry is being faced with many challenges, such as the high pricing of feed and unfair competition with other large entities. Ms. Makumbiro notes that the sector, once put together, is able to supply the market demand as opposed to what is obtaining on the ground, where the local farmers are being given second priority. Meanwhile, Director Livestock Development in the Ministry of Fisheries and Livestock, Mwambilwa Kabemba, says government is in the process of refining legislation in the livestock sector, which he hopes will enhance the growth of the sector and subsequently the pig industry.
The livestock sector in Zambia is said to be growing, with the number of farmers diverting from common cattle rearing to other livestock such as chicken, goats, and pigs. The sector is said to be lucrative once modalities are put in place, alas things seem blurry. This has prompted farmers in the pig sector to form an association which is aimed at highlighting the challenges and gains made in the pig sector, as well as foster change by engaging government and other relevant stakeholders. Sunday, 28th August 2022, the Pig Association of Zambia was launched with a call on the government to harmonize the sector and champion the interest of smallholder farmers who are in the majority in the pig sector. Association Chairperson Shamiso Makumbiro says the high cost of feed and market are among the top challenges the sector is facing.
We have seen Zambian pig farmers shut their operations due to what would seem outdated policies and which have left local or Zambian farmers vulnerable to manipulation by big entities. So that's been among the biggest challenge. If the price of pork per kg dropped drastically or to critically low, the price of pork per kg at one point dropped 5 to 6 times in a period of 6 months. And at the same time, the production costs remained very high. And as small-scale farmers or medium-scale farmers, we actually felt very squeezed. We felt like the little profit that we were making was taken away from us.
Ms. Makumbiro notes that the sector is alive to the demand, urging the government to reduce on importing pork products to focus more on the local farmers.
We feel that foreign large entities should be supplementing or complementing Zambian pig farmers. What we don't want to see is the foreign entities taking over the entire pig industry. If there is need, if us as Zambian pig farmers are able to meet the demand, then we do not see the reason why we should be accepting imports, large amount of imports. What we don't want is them importing a large amount of pork into Zambia, meaning that the smallest SME or the medium-scale farmer is left out, is being forced out.
Meanwhile, Director Livestock Development in the Ministry of Fisheries and Livestock, Mwambilwa Kabemba, says government's major challenge has been that farmers in the pig sector work in isolation, which has delayed progress, hoping that the new association will enhance communication channels to better the sector.
Government, first of all, one of the things that we have is that we welcome such initiatives. So we open our doors to the association for engagement on whatever things they might want government to intervene in. But also, over and above that, we are looking at developing the Livestock Development Act, which will regulate the players in the livestock industry. And so those are some of the things that we have in place to protect the livestock industry in general, but also the pig industry. One of the acts that we are reviewing is the Pig Industries Act, which is a very, very old piece of legislation, which is not even functional right now. But in the new Livestock Development Act, all those matters will be addressed and functionalized.
The Pig Farmers Association has been in existence for 2 months, formed by actual farmers to stand as a voice aimed at bridging the gap between the farmers and the buyers in the pig industry. Patrick Soko, Camnet News in Lusaka.
You're watching Camnet News. We take our first set of commercials. When we return, we have more interesting stories. Stay with us.
Your skin is the biggest muscle in your body. That's why we make sure that Oracle is #1 when it comes to taking care of your precious skin. Oracle Pure Petroleum Jelly and Glycerin soothes, moisturizes and keeps your skin perfect. Oracle Pure Petroleum products for that perfect skin.
It's census time. The 2022 Census of Population and Housing will be conducted from 18th August to 14th September 2022. The census collects a lot of data for use in various aspects of social and economic planning for the country. We are all required to participate in the census by being counted. You will be counted from your usual dwelling place by a census enumerator. Please receive and cooperate with the census enumerator and provide the required information when you will be visited. Your responses to the census questions will be treated with strict confidentiality and will be used for statistical purposes only.
Hi, I'm coming to count you.
Because everyone counts. This message is brought to you by the Zambia Statistics Agency with support from the UNFPA.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying on. Sikongo Member of Parliament Moyongo Simushi has predicted mass rice and wheat production in the constituency, which will also supply neighboring countries like Angola following empowerment of farmers under the Constituency Development Fund. In an interview, the Sikongo Member of Parliament notes that while the constituency has always had potential, limited empowerment opportunities as well as lack of machinery to make finished products have always hindered this potential. Meanwhile, the Sikongo lawmaker adds that plans to revive works on the Sikongo-Kalaba Road for easy transportation is underway after works stalled following the contractor abandoning works in the previous administration.
Areas in far-flung areas situated far away from Zambia's capital city, Lusaka, have for a long time lagged behind when it comes to development, both social and economic. This is the case of Sikongo constituency in Western Province, which has for a long time remained behind, despite being rich in rice and wheat. In an interview, Area Member of Parliament Moyongo Simushi notes that the district has only had 5 cooperatives over the years, but that the constituency has now seen the formation of various cooperatives following the increase in Constituency Development Fund CDF from 1.6 million to 25.7 million kwacha. Mr. Simushi notes that these funds will also help in purchasing machinery to make finished products out of wheat and rice for exportation to other countries like Angola.
We want to make sure that we take advantage of the comparative advantage that which our constituency has, and that is agriculture. So we want to make sure that we add value to the rice that we produce in Sikongo. We produce it in huge quantities to a point where we can feed this country and have enough for export. And then we've also embarked on wheat production. This wheat also is highly marketable, highly sought for, not only in this country but even outside the country. So again, we want to work with our people and make sure that we tap into this wheat production. We also have plantations that we have started for a cotton tree. And this cotton tree has so many functions. You can use it for its medicinal, you can use it in aeroplanes, you can use it in radio stations to cushion the sound, you can use it in hospitals and so on. So this again is another big project that we've embarked on.
The Sikongo lawmaker notes that as part of addressing the transportation challenges, works on the Sikongo-Kalaba Road are due to commence in the next few coming months.
We want to make sure that we take advantage of our livestock. Sikongo is so rich in terms of livestock. So we want to address the livestock diseases that we have, which have hindered the growth of the livestock sector in Sikongo. But then as we do that, we also want to make sure that we have processing plants for wheat, for rice, for livestock, so that we're able to export. We've got a huge market in Angola that we are trying to take advantage of, and that's why we are emphasizing to government, kindly work on the Calabos-Congo Road as quickly as possible, so that we open up the huge market that we have in Angola, which will help us as a country.
He has expressed confidence that the increased CDF will also help elevate rural areas, which he says have been sidelined for a long time. Zipporah Mshala, Camnet News, Lusaka.
Minister of Information and Media Chushi Kasanda has noted the need to ensure that underdeserved communities like rural areas have access to information through the creation of more community radio stations. She says this is because radio remains one of the most common mode of accessing information in rural areas. Speaking during the official opening of the 3rd African Preparatory Meeting for the World Radio Communication Conference to be held in 2023, Ms. Kasanda explains that providing these services requires concerted efforts. Speaking during the same meeting, which drew representatives across Africa, Minister of Technology and Science Felix Mutati has called on the private sector to come on board to make the enhancement of technology in the country a reality.
The importance of information communication technologies, ICTs, was highlighted during the period that the world was at its peak in fighting the coronavirus pandemic, as many activities from school to work were conducted digitally. Places like rural areas which lack most of these technologies have, however, continued to be left behind, meaning that even school-going children have lost many learning opportunities. The Ministry of Information and Media has therefore noted the importance of ensuring that there is widespread reach of these areas through the provision of more community radio stations, as this is the main technology in these places. Minister of Information and Media Chushi Kasanda was speaking during the official opening of the 3rd African Preparatory Meeting ahead of the World Radio Conference, which will be hosted by Zambia in 2023.
This meeting is a very important meeting, not only to us as a country, but the entire continent. I have been informed that the WRC preparatory meeting generally focuses on spectrum planning and management. It is from such meetings that plans for the necessary spectrum resources to facilitate the introduction of new technologies are made. It is also through such engagements that we can collectively plan for frequencies and avoid interference in frequencies.
Meanwhile, Minister of Technology and Science Felix Mutati, who was speaking at the same meeting, has noted the need for the private sector to massively invest in technology in Zambia so that no one is left behind.
If we do that, then we are beginning that critical work. The work for the Africa we want. The Africa we want must be one where nobody is left behind on the critical journey to digitally transform the continent.
In adding his voice, International Telecommunication Union Director of Radio Communication Mario Maniwik has also spoken out.
While we are thrilled with the attainments thus far, we also recognize that the work is not yet over. A couple of months ago, the ITU published the 2022 edition of the Global Connectivity Report. The report shows that only 1/3 of the African population is using the internet, while our goal is to achieve universal and affordable internet access to all. Having said that, I'm convinced that ITU is on the right path to promote the rapid and sustainable development of ICTs in Africa.
The meeting was well attended by over 300 delegates from the African continent specialized in ICT. Zipporah Mshala, Camnet News, Lusaka.
Overland Mission, a faith-based organization, says it will bring together traditional leadership, among them chiefs, kings and queens, in Lusaka, Zambia, to celebrate the King of Kings, who is God Almighty. Overland Mission International Director of Operations, Jacob, says the event will be attended by 250 kings, queens and chiefs coming from 32 nations of Africa for a 2-day gospel event which will feature different artists of Zambia, and the Democratic Republic of Congo President of Forum of African Tradition, Fata King Ntinu Difimafomo, says it is a privilege for Zambia to be the first country to host an event of such magnitude that will have a transformation impact on the continent.
The mission of Overland Missions, and I invited them in Kinshasa. Then now we decided to work together in the development of Africa, and we invite them in more of our conference in Africa. They will help on development, and when sometime is possible to accompany us in gospel music.
This will entail 250 kings, queens, chiefs coming together for the first time for a two-day gospel event. It'll be an event unlike anything we've seen here in Zambia before, and truly that Africa has seen before. In addition, Grand Chief Matthew Kuncum of the Cree Nation of Canada will come in as the keynote speaker for the event. He is the only traditional leader who has been appointed to the United Nations to represent all First Nation people around the world. Overland Missions is also excited to have FATA, which is the Forum of African Traditional Authorities, to be a part of this great event.
You're still watching Camnet News. We take our second set of commercials. When we return, we look at sports and international news. Stay with us.
Water is life. Each drop counts and each must be cherished. Our tried and tested product meets all international standards. With our smart drip technology, we aim to deliver precision irrigation designed to reduce blockage and wastage, ensuring a high yield. RainGlow, your smart irrigation partner.
Thank you for staying on. In international news, Saturday's fighting was focused on a densely populated city center and involved heavy artillery. Hundreds were trapped in hospitals. Government and residential buildings were damaged. In other news, dignitaries, including South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa, the Democratic Republic of Congo's President Felix Tshisekedi, and Portugal's President Marcelo Rebelo, filled rows of white and gold seats.
Russia's invasion of Ukraine has had an immediate economic impact on Egypt, the world's biggest wheat importer, which has relied on the ex-Soviet states for over 80% of its grain. The crisis spurred by the Ukraine war is also casting darkness upon Egypt's streets as the government deems light to free up energy for export and bolster ad currency reserves, a move that has met criticism. There are frequent power cuts. It occurs when people are studying, working, and it lasts for a very long time. For instance, the power can go out at 7 p.m. and never come back till the next morning. We're now paying for electricity much more than before. It is now operated by prepaid cards, but it's not different from the old payment system. Prices are the same. The country's vital tourism sector has also been hit by the Ukraine conflict, cutting the flow of holidaymakers in a country still hurting from the 2011 revolution and the COVID-19 pandemic. Following Saturday's deadly clashes that took place in the Libyan capital, killing over 30 people, the Prime Minister of the government addressed the nation as the residents fear the fighting could explode into a wider war and a return to the peaks of Libya's long-running conflict. The fighting broke out early Saturday and pitted militia loyal to the Tripoli-based government against other armed groups. This aggression was overcome. They turned away defeated, dragging the tale of disappointment and shame as they walk on the blood of the innocent, which they shed for the sake of power and their bloated egos. The oil-rich country has for years been split between rival administrations, each backed by the militia and foreign governments. The president called on all Libyan parties to forget the conflict of the past, stressing that the solution lies in elections. No to fabricated solutions. Yes to the election. No to war. Yes to the elections. No to extension. Yes to the elections. We all shall live, but through the elections. Militia clashes are not uncommon in Tripoli. Last month, at least 13 people were killed in militia fighting. Angola's former president, José Eduardo dos Santos, was laid to rest amid a family row. The funeral, which was disputed by some of his children, was held at the historical palm tree-lined Praça da República in the seaside capital Luanda on what would have been dos Santos' 80th birthday. It comes days after his party saw its worst result at the polls in a hotly contested election since independence. It's indeed very painful to say goodbye to a head of state who led the nation for 37.5 years, almost 38. He courageously took on the role of head of state at a good time for the country. But in the end, he managed to win the war and unite all Angolans. Under dos Santos, Angola became one of Africa's top oil producers. He stepped down in 2017, appointing João Lourenço as his successor, who now stands to gain a second term in office. Dos Santos passed a series of laws before his departure from government, granting himself broad judicial immunity. The remains of José Eduardo dos Santos is an Agosianento Muslim built for himself. His eldest daughter, who has faced a slew of investigations into his multinational business dealings, did not attend the funeral.
We now look at sports news. The Zambia Chess Federation President Mukobolo Chilofya says the team is in camp training ahead of the Africa Individual Chess Championship that will be held in Nigeria, slated for 17th to 28th September 2022. In an interview, Chilofya notes that the training has since intensified ahead of the forthcoming tournament that will see the participation of 9 chess players. Chilofya has expressed happiness over the government's goodwill of supporting different kinds of sport and different disciplines. Chilofya adds that the team is expected to win medals in both the tournament that are the World Chess Championships and the Africa Individual Chess Championships. Let's look at this.
Allow me to thank His Excellency the President for the initiative. I'm very grateful. His level of support is instrumental to the players. It has boosted them around. The next big thing for chess, we are preparing the national team for the World Cup next year, and we are scheduled to travel to Nigeria next month from 17th to 28th for the Africa Individual Chess Championship. And then on the cards also is preparing the under-16 national team, scheduled to travel to Azerbaijan in October for the under-16. Exciting, and we promise more medals with this unprecedented level of support from His Excellency and His government. We pledge to bring more medals to the country. We send a team of 7 players, 2 officials, and it's a budget of 458,000 kwacha. And our young players, they may be led by Camnet in camp as we speak, coached by Ifundanga. And that Victoria will be representing the girls in the female category. We hope the boys will bring the medals because they got to the task. Very sharp.
That note ends our news. The headlines once again. Police deployed to capture suspected hired assassins in MAFINGA district. Whirlwind leaves over 50 families homeless in SIAVONGA district. UPND'S obvious MWALITETA sues government for malicious prosecution. In international news, Libya's capital remains tense after more than 30 killed in violent clashes. And in sports news, the chess national team in camp ahead of Africa Individual Chess Champions to be held in Nigeria. We look at the Camnet verse of the day. It's coming from Galatians 3 verse 28, and it reads, "There is neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, male or female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus." Thank you so much for watching Camnet TV. My name is Sharon Kalimula. Good night.